All right, let's dive into one of the most incredible systems in the entire human body. We're talking about the biological network that lets you think, move, and feel all in the blink of an eye. This is your body's own high-speed internet, the neural system.
So let's start with a pretty fundamental question. Have you ever really thought about how a simple idea, like I want to pick up that cup, actually turns into the precise muscle movements to make it happen? Well, the answer lies in the lightning-fast world of neural control.
At the very heart of all this is something called coordination. It's basically the ultimate teamwork. It's how all of our organs talk to each other to keep our bodies in a stable, balanced state. Now, the slow and steady endocrine system plays a part with hormones, sure, but today, we're focused on the super-fast, instantaneous communication of the neural system.
So what makes the neural system so special? It's all about the structure. Think of it like a dedicated point-to-point fiber optic network for your body. It's not like broadcasting a Wi-Fi signal. It's a direct cable from one point to another, which allows for incredibly rapid and targeted messages. That's absolutely crucial for reacting to the world around us.
You can see here how this whole network is basically split into two main parts. You've got the central neural system, or CNS. That's the command center, the brain and spinal cord. And then, branching off from there, you have the peripheral neural system, the PNS. This is the vast web of nerves that's like all the wiring, connecting that command center to every single part of your body, carrying signals back and forth constantly.
So, how does this incredible network actually send its messages? Well, to figure that out, we need to zoom way in and meet the star of the show, the individual nerve cell, the neuron.
And this is it, the fundamental messenger. Every single neuron is built to do one job and do it really well. Detect, receive, and pass on information. The flow is always the same. Signals come in through those branch-like dendrites, they get processed in the main cell body, and then a new signal gets fired down that long cable, the axon, to be passed on to the next cell.
Now, let's break this down, because each part has a very specific job. The cell body is the neuron's brain. The dendrites are like its antennas, constantly listening for signals. The axon is the transmission line. But here's a really cool part, the myelin sheath. It's basically insulation, like the plastic coating on an electrical wire. It prevents the signal from fizzling out. And, get this, it makes the signal travel way faster by letting it jump between these little gaps, the nodes of Ranvier. At the very end, you have the synaptic knob, which holds the chemical messengers we're going to talk about in a bit.
And you know, neurons aren't a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. Their shape is perfectly suited for their job. In your brain's cerebral cortex, for instance, you'll find multipolar neurons with tons of dendrites, perfect for collecting information from many different sources at once. But in the retina of your eye, you find bipolar neurons, a simple, direct line for sending one clear, strong signal. Form really does follow function.
We just mentioned that myelin sheath insulation. Well, it turns out axons can be either myelinated or non-myelinated, and the difference is huge. It all comes down to speed. Myelinated axons are the expressways of your nervous system. The signal literally leaps from gap to gap, making them incredibly fast. You find these in your long-distance spinal and cranial nerves. The non-myelinated ones? They're more like the slower local roads, found in places where that breakneck speed isn't quite as critical.
So we've got the structure down, but how does the actual message, the nerve impulse, travel? It's all about electricity, and it is a fascinating process. So let's take a closer look at how a neuron actually fires.
Okay, so before a neuron can fire, it has to be in a ready state. This is called the resting potential. The neuron is constantly working, pumping ions across its membrane to build up an electrical charge, kind of like charging a tiny battery. The inside is kept negative and the outside is positive, just waiting for a trigger.
This polarized state is all thanks to the neuron's membrane, which is super picky about what it lets in and out. Think of it like a bouncer at a club. It lets potassium ions leak out pretty easily, but it keeps most of the sodium ions locked outside. That, combined with some negatively charged proteins stuck inside, is how the neuron maintains that negative charge on the inside. It's primed and ready to go.
And here it is, the magic moment. When a stimulus hits the neuron, tiny gates on the membrane fly open, and all those positively charged sodium ions that were waiting outside come flooding in. This causes a massive, instantaneous flip in the electrical charge. It's called depolarization. For just a split second, the inside of the neuron becomes positive. That sudden flip, that is the nerve impulse. That's the action potential.
What's so amazing is how this impulse travels.
The sudden electrical change at one spot on the axon creates a current that immediately triggers the very next spot to flip its charge, which triggers the next, and so on. It's like a wave or a line of dominoes falling. It becomes this self-sustaining chain reaction that shoots down the entire length of the axon without ever losing strength.
Okay, so the electrical impulse has raced to the very end of the axon. But now what? It can't just jump across to the next neuron. It has to cross this microscopic gap called the synapse.
Take a look at this junction here. You can see the end of the first neuron, the axon terminal, and it's separated from the next neuron by this tiny, fluid-filled space called the synaptic cleft. That electrical signal can't make the leap, it needs some help, and that help comes in the form of chemical messengers.
Right, so here's the crucial part. The signal has to switch from electrical to chemical and then back to electrical again. When the action potential arrives, it triggers these tiny bubbles filled with chemicals, neurotransmitters, to dump their contents into that gap. These chemicals float across, lock onto specific receptors on the next neuron, like a key in a lock, and that action opens up ion channels, starting a brand new electrical impulse. Just like that, the message has been passed on.
So we've seen how individual neurons talk to each other. Now let's zoom back out and look at the place where literally trillions of these conversations are happening every single second, the brain.
This is it, the command and control system for your entire body. It processes everything, from what you see and hear to your thoughts, your emotions, and your memories. It's the ultimate information hub, controlling not only the actions you choose to make, but also the vital functions you don't even think about, like your breathing and your heartbeat.
You can think of the brain as having three major departments. The hindbrain at the back is like the life support system. It handles all the automatic stuff, breathing, balance, heart rate. The midbrain is like the central switchboard, routing all the sensory information to the right places. And the forebrain? That's the CEO's office. It's where all the complex thinking, memory, and decision-making happens.
All right, let's put it all together now. How does this whole system, from a single neuron firing all the way up to the brain, actually produce a coordinated response? Let's look at one of the simplest and fastest examples there is.
We're talking about a reflex action. This is your nervous system on autopilot. It's that involuntary, practically instantaneous response you have when you, say, touch something hot. The key thing here is that it happens without you thinking about it, because in these situations, speed is absolutely everything.
This process uses an incredible neural shortcut called the reflex arc. When a pain receptor in your skin fires off a warning, the signal zips along a sensory neuron straight to your spinal cord. Now here's the genius part. Instead of taking the extra time to send the message all the way up to the brain for a decision, the spinal cord takes charge and immediately sends a command back down a motor neuron to your muscle, telling it to contract. You yank your hand away before your brain even has a chance to fully register the pain. It's a beautiful, efficient circuit designed purely for your protection.
And that just brings us to a final, pretty mind-blowing thought. A simple reflex like that uses maybe a handful of neurons. But your nervous system contains somewhere around 100 times billion of them. So as you're sitting here, listening and processing all of this, what are all those other billions upon billions of neurons up to right now? That's the incredible mystery and the wonder of the network within each of us.